how was that possible? Every single tree. Well, we had it. The hurricane of '38 in Rhode Island actually is the starting point for the new urban forest in Rhode Island, because almost every single tree, 93% of the trees found in urban areas were actually decimated by that storm, which happened close to 100 years ago. But I'll show you this later. But tree storm assessment results. This shows for the 6 communities. And you can see the larger communities, they have more trees, but it showed that basically $1.97 million, only $2 million would be the cost of removal in the town of North Providence if they had a severe storm, just from debris removal. This is just getting rid of the debris, whereas something like Johnson, it was 4.28 million. And again, it's related to the not only the composition of the forest, but also the density and the amount of area. Warwick, which is one of the largest communities in the state, you can see that their total cost would be about 34 million to get rid of the trees. Now, the key with surveying, when you do these 6% surveys, or those that require just a limited amount of territory to look at, is understanding standards. And although I hired these environmental science students because they were very bright, the one thing I was looking for, I interviewed 40 and I selected 6, was because I was looking for diligence, reliability, and those that can follow the standards or protocols to the key. Because in all these studies, it's very important that the training is precise. In other words, if you overcount by just 2 trees in any one of these surveys, you're going to increase the total population count by about 250 trees. And that could really skew your results. So training is important. It has to be impeccable with these surveys. The power of them, though, is that if you do them right, you've got so much information that you can you can really develop some magnificent management plans that can produce healthy and productive forests and actually give good information to towns that they can use to in their preparedness plans. And when I say about protocols, you'll be surprised. One of the study models that I used in training is because when we did a survey, we were actually looking not only at street trees, but we wanted to get about 90% of the urban trees covered in every community to make this an accurate survey. So we actually selected, by using GIS and aerial maps, we found that in 95% of the times, if you just surveyed 40 feet around the perimeter of house lots, of the houses, you would actually capture 95% of all the trees in that community. There were some that couldn't be counted, such as like woodlands that were maybe in the deep backyards. But the GIS surveys of just map areas showed us that if we actually just surveyed 40 feet around the houses, that we'd capture about 95% of the trees. Now, the next thing is that we had to be able to determine what the diameter size of those trees were. And this is where the human element comes in, and why training standards are very important to get accurate data. And what we did is, something that I learned back in college, is that the human eye is like a magnificent telescope, but you have to train it into what it's looking at and what it's seeing. And we would have regular sessions with my 5, what I call green team personnel, and we would use just parking lots, and I would set up, I would actually set up in the beginning just plank wood of different diameters and at different lengths away from each other. And sometimes they were 20 feet, but other times they were actually 140 feet. And you'll be surprised when the human eye focuses, you could actually determine what the diameter size of a tree is 120 feet away, as opposed to one that's 10 feet in front of you. And the reason we did that is because we didn't have time to actually get permission to access backyards. And I didn't want anyone, because of the threat of dogs or people saying that you're trespassing, to do that. But I went out several times with the crews, and you'll be surprised that in our de facto study areas, they became spot on in actually determining sizes of trees and actually identifying them from their leaves as far as 150 to 200 feet away. So that's the key with protocoling. And the other thing is that this exercise, we were able to do a lot of compositional work on the forest. It actually told us the major species in the community so that we knew what had been planted over the last 50 years, some of them exotic, some of them introduced, those plants that really weren't long-lived and didn't have a long life expectancy and may have maybe needed replacement over time. The other thing that it told us is age diversity. This is very critical in management planning, especially if you're on a 100-year term line, such as the urban forest is. But you can see that in this slide, it showed us red is private property, green is public trees. So these would be street trees. These are all the trees that are found on private property in people's home yard. And then the blue line is the average of the two. And it showed that in diameter, this is the diameter size of the trees. You can see that in Johnson, one of the biggest problems is that they had a lot of smaller trees that were in the 4 to 10 diameter side, but you can see how all of a sudden the scale just dropped off once you got about 10 diameter inches. Now that shows that there has been a lot of planting probably 20, 30 years ago in the town of Johnston, but this is what is very concerning. You can see how the line just drops off, that many of the older trees have been missing, and a lot of that, the reason for that is development. Johnston has undergone a lot of development in the last 20 years. But the other thing, too, is that neglect and unhealthy practices have taken place. Maybe a lot of homeowners haven't regularly pruned their trees, or maybe they cut them down because they were fearful that some of them might be safety risks. The other thing is it did show that most of the trees were in decent condition. They were in pretty good shape. So that's a good sign, and it shows that at least the canopy cover was healthy. Oops. But this is interesting because it shows the annual benefits from the trees. And you can see, TJ had talked about this, but you can see one of the translations. It shows that in the Johnston, as the earlier slide showed, had 59,000 total trees in its community forest. But on a given year, each tree would give you about $1.66 worth of benefits, and the total was about $4,300,000 in total benefits from its urban forests. So it does show that the different ecological factors, that trees really are a workhorse when it comes to environmental services, and that we just have to do a better job of increasing this dividend from trees. I can tell you that, and this is just the 6 communities in a comparative, and it shows that, Warwick's urban forest, because it's much larger and it actually has much taller and bigger trees than the other communities, you can see that its community had about $12 million worth of benefits. So that's really something that until now really hasn't been talked about in the urban forests. But it's something that really is leading the argument today as we approach stakeholders and make claims that trees are capital assets, and they're really a low-cost solution to some very high technological problems that we face in our community, from changing, I call it climate variability. I don't like to use the word climate change, but certainly rising storms, stormwater and flooding, and also a high cost of energy. They can really assist us in reducing those costs and reducing those problems. I do have some of the final reports that were done on these communities if you want to take a look at them. But you should.
Are they available online?
No, we didn't put them online, but you can get copies if you contact the Tree Council. Most communities, we did send them to the different communities at their libraries. So if you go to these libraries, you can select them. But the three major results of all these communities, believe it or not, because there hasn't been much tree planting done both on the public and private side in the last 50 years. That's one of the things that these surveys have shown us. Here's what the three major problems was. Number one, although there has been more private planting than public planting in these communities over the last 50 years, the type of planting has been really underwhelming. By that I mean, and there's a lot of reasons for it, but most people on the private sides have been planting small-sized trees, like the dogwoods, the cherry trees, the magnolias. Now, there's nothing wrong with having beauty in your backyard, but from an environmental point of view, those produce the least amount of benefits. The second thing is they're also have a very small lifespan. So the key is for us to modify behavior by trying to get people, especially where there's a lot of soil volume or space, to start planting these larger trees like the oaks, the lindens, the tulip trees, the white pine, that really are not only here for a long period of time, but also they produce these benefits. The second thing that we found from this study is that most communities, because they don't have planting programs, that the public has really come to believe this myth about trees, that trees are hazard. Listen, trees have been here for millions of years. They were here long before you and I or any man or woman set foot on this earth. They know how to grow best. On any given day, we don't see limbs just falling out of trees, hurting people and damaging property. But it's been an easy sell for a lot of shifty horticulturalists, arborists to say, oh, you should take that tree down before a storm hits. You know, that's an easy solution. So we've lost a lot of good trees just because of that, you know, safety factor. So we all have to do a better job of educating the public that, you know, trees are capital assets, and if they're properly cared for in the first 25 of their lives, there should be no reason why they don't have the mechanical stability to stand tall and not cause problems in the future. So that's the second major problem. And then the last problem is just related to you know, poor governance. A lot of communities, you know, if you go on the websites, everyone today, the buzzword is, oh, have great green policies. But it's one thing to talk a good game. It's another thing to implement a good game. So few communities really back up what they have on their website. And we have to do a lot more with our planning ordinances to make sure trees are part of the development process, whether in planting them or preserving those old ones that still remain on the landscape. We have to do a better job of endorsing policies where homeowners contribute to actually planting and get them to actually understand the problems associated with the environment today and how trees can really assist us in solving many of those problems. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much. And so you could you just throw, I think there's one slide in there. Oh, this just shows you, this slide just shows you what I talked about, just highlights that in Warren, where we did one of our surveys, all we had to survey is a total of 56 total segments, but it was only 1.19 linear miles. And the cost was 150 hours, about $8,250. So they're not cheap, but the information they give for $8,000, if you knew everything about your urban and community forest and what had to be done to develop a productive management strategy. I mean, cities and communities spend this on lunch programs every day in the schools, as many of you know about. So,
well, it helps you out with
so maybe one day we can have a high schoolers say, we're going to give up our lunch, but use the money to develop a productive management plan in the urban forest. I don't know if I go along with that because I get hungry. But thank you. Any comments or questions? Good luck on your Envirothon. Thank you.